All right, happy Friday, Honors Algebra 2. Today our note's going to be about solving by factoring. Solving by factoring is probably the easiest method once you become familiar with it, as well as the quickest method to solving quadratics, so we kind of save the best for last. So here's how solve by factoring works. Let's take a look at number 1. So in number 1, we've got x squared plus 5x plus 4 equals 0. Our goal, similar to difference of squares, is going to be able to write these as two parentheses that we can multiply out to get x squared plus 5x plus 4. Now, in order for that to work, let's first take a look at our first term, which is x squared. The only way we can get x squared is to multiply x by x. Now, here's the other part, is we need for the numbers that go right here to multiply to be a 4, but instead of adding to be 0 like they did for difference of squares, we need for them to add to be a 5. Some people will set this up kind of as a number puzzle where they'll put the 4 on top and the 5 on the bottom, meaning that they want their numbers to multiply to be 4, add to be 5. You might already be thinking about what those numbers are. Those numbers should be a 4 and a 1, meaning that 4 plus 1 is 5 and 4 multiplied by 1 is 4. So we're going to use those numbers to fill in the blanks, and now we've got it in factored form, x plus 4 multiplied by x plus 1. Now here's where, because we're multiplying, we can use zero product property to set x plus 4 equal to 0, as well as to set x plus 1 equal to 0. And so to solve, you would just subtract 4 and get x equals negative 4 for one of your solutions. Then you would subtract 1 on your second equation to get x equals negative 1. Okay, now in number 2, very similar. We've got 2x squared plus 12x plus 18 equals 0. Now, here's, I guess, one way you could do it. If you go straight to setting up your parentheses, you could think about the only way to multiply to get 2x squared would be 2x and x, but you might see an easier way to do it compared to that, which is that you should always be looking for a GCF first. And in this case, we do have a greatest common factor. We can actually take everything and divide by 2. So once we've done that, we get 2 multiplied by x squared plus 6x plus 9 is equal to 0. Okay, so now let's continue to work this. But now we've got some smaller numbers to work with. For instance, to get x squared, that has to just be x multiplied by x. Now, we need two numbers that multiply to be a 9 that also add to be a 6. So if you want to set up that number puzzle like we did last time, multiply to be a 9, add to be a 6. And you probably already figured those out. Those have to be 3 and 3. 3 multiplied by 3 is 9. 3 plus 3 is 6. So then our equation is 2 multiplied by x plus 3 multiplied by x plus 3 equals 0. Now obviously 2 can't equal 0. If it was 2x, that would be different, but in this case, it's not going to really help us. For our next factor, x plus 3 equals 0, we would solve that by subtracting 3 from each side, so x would be equal to a negative 3. But if you notice, x plus 3 happened twice, so there should be two solutions of x equals negative 3. That's why before, we kept saying that that was a multiplicity of 2. What that multiplicity of 2 means is that that solution would have happened twice. In other words, there were two parentheses that would have given you that value of x equals negative 3. So if it didn't make sense before while we were writing that multiplicity of 2, hopefully now it's starting to make a little bit more sense. All right, tell you what, at this point, for number 3, why don't you pause the video, try to work through that one, and then I'll work through it with you. Okay, let's take a look at it. So we've got x squared minus 9x plus 20 equals 0. Now in this case, we don't have a greatest common factor, so we can go straight to setting up our two parentheses. Now, for the first number, or for our first term, to get x squared, the only way you can multiply and get the x squared at the beginning is x multiplied by x. Now we're looking for numbers that multiply to be 20, and they have to add to be a negative 9. So be careful with the sign there. So I think the two numbers that are going to work are going to be negative 4 and negative 5, because negative 4 multiplied by negative 5 is 20, negative 4 plus negative 5 is 9. I'm going to go ahead and fill those in, and then we can use zero product property to solve, to set those each equal to 0. So for your first factor, you get a solution of x equals 4. The second one, a solution of x equals 5. All right, moving along here. For number 4, tell you what, why don't you guys pause the video and try to work through that one as well. This one would work very similar to number 2 that we'd seen before. right, let's work through it. So hopefully you noticed, similar to number 2, that there was a GCF that you could factor out first. So let's take everything and divide by 3. So we're going to have our 3 out in front. Now we can set up our 2 parentheses, look for numbers that multiply to be 10, add to be -7. You could again use that number puzzle if you'd like to, but for this one you probably don't need it. That would be -5 and -2. Both of those would multiply to be 10. They would also add to be -7. Now, using zero product property, once again, 3 isn't going to equal 0. For x minus 5 equals 0, we do get a solution of x equals 5. And then for x minus 2 equals 0, we get a solution of x equals 2. Okay. So really the only thing that makes number 5 any different is that you're going to have different signs. If you notice, up until this point, our answers had either been both positive or both negative. Number 5 is where that stops being the case. We can take a real quick look at it here. Once again, notice no GCF. Only way to get x squared, x and x. So now we need numbers that multiply to be -14, that also add to be +5. Well, 7 and 2 would add to be 14. In order to get a +5, we'd have to have a +7 and a -2. And then for zero product property, really for this one, you can just switch the sign of each term. So x equals -7 and x equals +2. Hopefully with that example, you can start to see why factoring is a preferred method. It's pretty quick, pretty easy to use. Okay, I'm going to skip past number 6, really not a whole lot going on there. Once again, you should notice a GCF on number 6 of 3, and then you can use that to solve on your own if you'd like to. For number 7, I'm going to skip past that one too. It doesn't even have a GCF, so really not anything new there. For number 8, GCF is 4, but once you take that out, it should be pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at number 9 though, because number 9 is where things get a little bit different. And I forgot the equal sign, so if you can make sure that each of those equals 0 from number 9 on out, that'd be great. Here's the problem with number 9. We've got 3x squared plus 10x plus 8 equals 0. Any other problem that we've had where there's been a number in front of x squared, we've been able to just factor that number out as a GCF. But if you notice on this one, you can't do that. 10 isn't divisible by 3 and neither is 8. So we're going to have to do something different. One method that some people will use is what's called guess and check. So I'll show you that method first, and then I'll show you how you can work through it a little bit more methodically. So with guess and check, here's how that works. To get 3x squared, there's only one way to do that, which is 3x multiplied by x, or x multiplied by 3x. The order really doesn't matter. But then for an 8, there's a couple different ways that we could multiply and get an 8. One would be 1 times 8. The other would be 2 multiplied by 4. So here's how this method kind of works, is that you have to kind of guess and check your way through it until you find which of those combos also adds to be 10. And so let's maybe just try 1 and 8. So if you think about what the sum would be, if you were to use 1 and 8, you'd have 1x plus 8 multiplied by 3 is 24x, and 1 plus 24x is 25x, which doesn't equal 10x. So that combination isn't going to work. Let's try a different combination then. Let's maybe just switch the order and see if that would be helpful. So let's maybe put the 1 over here and the 8 over here. And if we put them in that order, now we've got 8x plus 1 multiplied by 3 is 3x. And we got pretty darn close. 8 plus 3 is 11x, but still, once again, not equal to 10x. Okay, let's go back. Let's try again. So obviously 8 and 1 aren't going to work no matter what order you put them in. Let's maybe try 2 and 4 next. So if we do 2 and 4, we're going to have, let's see, 2x plus 4 plus 3 is 12x, which then 2x plus 12x is 14x, still not equal to 10x. So let's try one more time. Let's switch the order for our 2 and our 4. Let's write it as 4 and 2 in this direction. And once we've done that, we're going to have 4x plus 2 multiplied by 3 is 6x. And 4x plus 6x is in fact 10x. So then there would be your two factors, which would be 3x plus 4 and x plus 2. And then you would continue to solve by setting each equal to 0. So that's the guess and check method. Let me show you a different method that will still get you the right answer, but doesn't require guess and check. So I'm going to do that kind of below our previous problem we just worked. I'm just going to copy it down. 3x squared plus 10x plus 8 is equal to 0. All right, so now here's how this is going to work. You're going to set up your two parentheses, still equals 0. We're going to go ahead and use that number puzzle that I showed you earlier, where we said that we want our two numbers to multiply to be the top number and add to be the bottom number. Here's how it's going to be different though. Because there's a number in front of x squared, we need to take 3 multiplied by 8. Means that our two numbers need to multiply to be 24. Now, the middle number does not get affected. They still need to add to be 10. So now we've got a puzzle set up to where we need numbers that multiply to be 24, add to be 10. So think about that. And I think those numbers should be 6 and 4. Now, here's going to be what's different, is we're not going to go straight to putting those as our answers. That is not what we want to do. Instead, what we need to look at is the fact that we multiplied by 3 at first. So we need to also go through and think about what it would look like to factor a 3 out of both of these expressions. In other words, the 3 and the 6 and the 3 and the 4, look to see if either can be reduced. For the 3 and the 6, they're both divisible by 3. That would become 1 and 2. For the 3 and the 4, those can't be reduced. So the top number goes with x. The bottom number is left alone. Your two factors should be x plus 2 and 3x plus 4, which, if you notice, are the exact same two that we had from guess and check, just in a different order. Now, just to remind you about solving, I still need to set those equal to 0 to solve if you hadn't already. So for one solution, x equals negative 2. For the other, you would first subtract 4, then divide by 3. So x equals negative 4 over 3 for our second solution. Okay, let's do a couple more practice problems like that to make sure that that makes sense, and then we'll probably call it a day. So let's take a look at number 10, where we've got 3x squared minus 8x plus 4 is equal to 0. Let's work on guess and check first, and then we can maybe do our other method. So the first thing for guess and check, only one way to get 3x squared, which is 3x and x. Now to get our 4, there's a couple of different ways we can do that. We can either do 1 multiplied by 4 or 2 multiplied by 2. Let's start with 1 and 4. So if we do 1 and 4, we get 12x plus 1x is 13x. Not going to work. Let's maybe switch the order of those. Put the 4 here and the 1 here. 3x plus 4x is 7x. Again, not going to work. So let's maybe try the 2's. So we need to do 2 and 2. We've got 2x and 6x is 8x. Now we wanted it to be a negative 8x. If that's the case, we should probably make both of those negative, to where negative 2 multiplied by negative 2 is still positive 4. And now we've got negative 8x in the middle. So that would be guess and check. In fact, at this point, using guess and check, we could just go straight to setting each equal to 0 and solve it. Let's talk about the other method though. So let's talk about using the number puzzle to help us solve. So we've got 3x squared minus 8x plus 4 equals 0. So first thing, if we're going to use this other method, is we need to remember to take first term multiplied by last term. So 3 multiplied by 4 is 12. Now the middle term you're just going to leave as a negative 8. Then we'll set up our number puzzle where we're looking for two numbers that multiply to be 12 and also add to be negative 8, which should be negative 6 and negative 2, being that negative 6 multiplied by negative 2 is 12, negative 6 plus negative 2 is negative 8. Now, the other thing we need to also keep in mind is that we multiplied by this 3, so we need to go back in and factor out that 3. Now again, you're looking to simplify if both numbers are divisible by the same number. For instance, on the left side here, we can divide these both by 3. The right side, we can't really do anything with it. Remember, top number gets the variable, so then your two parentheses would be x minus 2 and 3x minus 2. At which point now we can set those both equal to 0 and solve. For the first one, you end up getting x equals 2. For the second one, you end up getting x equals positive 2 over 3. And then there would be your two solutions. All right, let's do one more like that just to make sure that that makes sense depending on which way you want to work it, and then we can be done for today. So let's take a look at number 11. We've got 5x squared plus 13x minus 6 is equal to 0. So let's use guess and check first, and then I'll take you through that other method. For guess and check, first thing, to get 5x squared, only one way to do that, which is 5x and x. Now to get a 6, two different ways, 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. And then because it's a negative 6, that means that one's going to have to end up being positive, the other's going to have to end up being negative. We don't really know which one is going to be which yet. All right, let's start with 1 and 6. So if we start with 1 and 6, we get 1x and 30x. And what you want to think about is there any way that you can take 1x and 30x and combine those to get 13x? And in this case, there isn't. So 1 and 6 in that order are not going to work. Let's maybe try 6 and 1 in the other order. So now we've got 6x and 5x. Once again, what you want to be thinking about is there any way I can combine those to get 13x? Once again, answer is no. That means that 6 and 1 are not going to work. Let's try 2 and 3. So with 2 and 3, I'm going to keep those in this order first. We've got 2x as well as 15x. Is there any way you can combine 2x and 15x to get a positive 13x? And the answer is yes. You can take 15x minus 2x to get 13x. That means that we want the 15x, where we got that from, the 3 multiplied by 5 to be positive, and the 2x, where we got that from, to be a negative. So then with guess and check, we are done. Except for the solving part, obviously. Let's go ahead and work it using the other method, the puzzle method. So we'll start this one by taking our first term multiplied by our last term. So 5 multiplied by 6 is negative 30. And then we still want those numbers to add to be a 13. So now setting this up, be very careful here. It's very tempting to want to say that the answer is 10 and 3, because 10 plus 3 is 13, and 10 multiplied by 3 is 30, but it's not a positive 30, it's not a negative 30, it's a positive 30. So 10 and 3 aren't going to work. Instead, we're going to have to use 15 and a negative 2, which, if you notice, not coincidentally, are the same numbers that we used earlier when we were doing guess and check. In this case, 15 plus negative 2 is 13, and multiplied by negative 2 is negative 30. Now again, don't forget we've got this 5 that we need to go in and factor out. So on the left side, 5 and 15 can both be divided by 5. The right side, nothing can be simplified. So our two factors would be x plus 3 and 5x minus 2. So then let's go ahead and solve this one just to make sure once again that we're familiar with how to do that. The first one is rather easy. Just switch the sign to be x equals negative 3. The next one, you would be adding over the 2 and dividing by the 5. So then x would be equal to 2/5. Okay, that about does it for factoring. Now factoring is something you should have seen before in Algebra 1. May or may not have used it much in geometry, but it is an important concept and one that, as you can tell, we're only spending one day with. Regular Algebra 2 will spend probably 2 to 3 days just on this one topic. So if you need some extra practice over the weekend, make sure you're getting onto big ideas and doing that. There is homework on big ideas for solved by factoring, so make sure you're working through that first. That is due Monday by 4 p.m. In addition to that, Big Ideas has tons of extra practice problems for factoring. Just go to that skills trainer, go to where those factoring practice problems are, and make sure you work through, and that factoring is something that you are able to do, and not just able to do, but able to do quickly, which means that you need to do some practice. All right, guys, that being said, have a great weekend, and I'll have another video up for you for Monday.